here to discuss the ups, downs and sideways of the sport of figure skating, and maybe give you +5 GOE along the way. Let's introduce this week's hosts.
Hi, I'm Yogeeta, and I've spent this weekend being very angry about the ladies' event. My Twitter handle is @Lilyorum.
Hi, I'm Lei. It's 2 a.m. in Australia. I have work in a few hours, and figure skating did this to me. My Twitter handle is Axel Sandwich.
What's up? I'm Evie, and I've been running on very little sleep for the past 3 days because European events really hate me. My Twitter handle is @DoubleFlux. So let's just go over some recent news in the figure skating community that's happened over the last week since our last episode. So firstly, Kevin Reynolds, the Canadian men's skater, has had to abandon his free skate to Ni no Kuni after an ongoing dispute with the rights holder. This is a problem that a lot of people trying to skate to music written by the composer Joe Hisaishi have. He's got a really big legal team, and it can be very difficult trying to secure rights to music for use in programs. So unfortunately, Kevin's had to dump his free skate for the season, and he's going to have a new program next week for NHK, which is kind of unfortunate. You know, it's not a big time turnaround, and I hope that he is able to give us a good program next week.
I almost wish he was just going back to his program last season and not trying to put out a brand new program in a week.
It's strange, but I guess, whatever works for him. Speaking of NHK, another sad bit of news is Gabrielle Dailman, the Canadian ladies champion, has unfortunately withdrawn from her second Grand Prix assignment, again, due to focusing on her mental health. So, we hope she recovers and gets better, and we hope to see her back whenever she's ready to come back to competition.
Props to her for putting her mental health first, I think.
Yeah. That's
really rare in the sporting community, and it's a good example to set. In slightly happier news, in her stead, Kailani Crane from Australia has been assigned to the NHK, which, yay! Oh my god, I love Kailani. She has so much energy and skates with so much joy and enthusiasm, and I believe this is her first Grand Prix assignment.
It's her second, I think. She was at Skate Canada last year.
Right. So she wasn't initially assigned to anything this year, so it's really, really it's lovely to see her get an assignment.
Yay for Australian figure skating.
Yay, Australian figure skating. We're tiny, but we're here.
Moving on, entries for the Challenger Series event Talent Trophy are now available, and it's pretty packed. Notable entries include Maxim Compton, Vincent Zhou, Luna Hendricks, Anastasia Gumanova, and Karen Chen. Also, for some reason, Anna Kuzmenko was assigned, and she is not eligible for this competition, and I think the ISU still hasn't fixed this.
Yeah, she's only 14, and I don't know why they haven't taken her off the entries yet. It's really strange to see that. I hope she doesn't end up accidentally going all the way to Tallinn, Estonia for this competition, only to be turned away because she's underage.
And in final news, Daisuke Takahashi has won the Western Sectionals 11 points ahead of Kazuki Tomono. So yay, the year of uncle resurgence. It's so great to see him back in the competitive scene and doing so well too. So we'll see him at Japanese Nationals in December. It should be a very, very packed, arena.
Yes.
But anyway, we publish a weekly roundup of news stories that you might have missed during the week on our website. So just go to inthelowpodcast.com and you'll find all our articles there.
He's the commander of figure skating right now, and he totally took control.
So today in the episode, we're obviously going to be talking about Grand Prix Helsinki, which happened over this weekend. And I think for a lot of people, it was very chaotic. It was definitely an emotional roller coaster, wouldn't you guys agree?
It happened. I think the Cup of China curse has carried over regardless of the country it's in.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was a rough event for quite a number of skaters, and I think people that you may have expected to do well, there were a lot of mistakes and just errors. It's the third event of the Grand Prix series, but for a lot of skaters, this could be their debut event. So hopefully it's sort of, first event jitters. But yeah, it was a mixed bag, I think, just in general.
For me, there were definitely a lot more low points than high points.
But you know what was a high point was huge shout out to the rest of the In the Loop team members, our European contingent who were at the event. I think we probably spent half the weekend just reading them screaming in the group chat.
It was definitely worth it.
Yeah, so it's really, really lovely. Just the experience of going live. It's not it's not an experience that a lot of fans are privileged to have, but like I think anyone who went to the event live, no matter how chaotic, would have found something amazing and memorable about the experience. So
let's begin with the ladies.
Let's just say there were some really, really amazing comebacks, first of all. We had Luna Hendricks, who, had to withdraw from the free skate at SCAM due to illness, making a really, really strong short program performance. We also had Carrie Sakamoto from Japan going from 7th place in her short program to 3rd in the overall placements. So honestly, there were some pretty decent skates throughout the entire event, but unfortunately it was also somewhat controversial, shall we say. And this is something that we are going to title this discussion. We're going to broadly title, "We Need to Talk About the Tech Panel." So, Yogeeta, you have quite strong opinions on this, I believe.
I have a lot of opinions about the tech panel. Let's first introduce what the tech panel actually does. So, as a brief background, the tech panel supposedly is in charge of actually finding any issues in the elements. So, whether they meet level requirements, whether they, for a Lutz or a flip, if they had started on the right edge, and if they had any under rotation issues, they are distinct from the judges who award GOE and PCS. So, the tech panel are the ones who make the technical scores drop, and usually they are a bit hit or miss. Sometimes at competitions they're extremely lenient, sometimes at competitions they're very hard hitting on the skaters, and most consistently they're inconsistently hard hitting on skaters.
Yeah. So as viewers and people viewing live, there are ways to kind of almost be your own tech panel, right? Where you can identify or learn to identify when there's an under rotation or there's an edge issue. But mostly we're sort of relying on broadcast as viewers who aren't at the venue live. So in that sense, a lot of fans who are interested in the judging and the scoring will pause videos on YouTube and sort of analyze them frame by frame to kind of see exactly where, for example, a skater touches down. And so one of the sort of issues that we think probably the tech panel faces is the fact that when you are looking at something from a camera angles lie all the time. And some angles may conceal under rotations better than others. And so the problem here is that the general tech panel in basically all international ISU competitions don't get very high-tech, high-speed cameras. For most competitions, they only get one replay camera that's positioned to the right side of the judges' table. When you think just a little bit more closely about that, that does seem like quite a weakness when you're trying to assess how well a skater's landed through the entire rink, right?
Yeah, definitely. But you can also see, from the ISU perspective, obviously, that getting expensive camera that's going to have to do these slow motion replays is obviously a cost that they don't want to bear, because obviously figure skating is already a very, it's not a popular sport. There's not going to be it's not going to warrant that kind of investment. Just think if you had to have two dedicated slow motion cameras, that could go into the tens of thousands. And then you'd also need people to operate those cameras. And if you're even having two cameras in the rink, you're going to need two people to operate the replays for the tech panel. And it just costs, surmounting over time. So you can see from the economic perspective that it's obviously to them not a great investment. But at the same time, you think about how they have the one camera in the rink, and it's not even properly showing one because of the way that the camera has to be angled to capture the bottom left-hand corner of the rink. You can't see certain things properly, and that's why a lot of people say when you notice skaters who have flip or lutz edge errors usually put their jumps in that corner of the rink because the tech panel camera doesn't accurately shoot it properly, and so the tech panel might be more lenient towards giving the skater the benefit of the doubt on that edge if they can't view it properly with the camera. So it's really questionable and just, oh, it's annoying. God damn it, tech panels.
Yeah, the limitations of technology mean that it's easy to kind of, game the system. And not saying like skaters do that deliberately, but obviously as a strategic choice, it is something, it's a loophole, and it's kind of a weakness that people can exploit. But, as Evie said, good high-speed cameras, multiple angles, they're all huge economic costs that, frankly, like, unless figure skating becomes better funded, gets more audience, and gets, more sponsorship and viewership, it really just, there is no real priority being given to a solution like that of like, high frame rate cameras and high quality multiple angle equipment.
And also, it just confuses me that they don't give the tech panel access to the other cameras in the rink, like the broadcast cameras, because sometimes the ones that you see on the broadcast have decent angles to view the edges and under rotations because they're all around the rink. So I'm really confused as to why they don't allow the tech panel or the data replay operator to use those feeds as well.
Yeah, that would probably make the most sense to me because they wouldn't need to hire any additional camera work. Even if it's not like the best cameras, the best slow-mo cameras, it still will get them more information and more data needed to make the right calls and the best calls for the sake of the skaters.
Absolutely. And on the topic of, I suppose, when we were talking about tech panels being consistently inconsistent, my personal feeling is that we've said this before, but harsh tech panels aren't the problem. Even though actually in the rulebook it says the tech panel should rule in favor of a skater when a call is uncertain. But a harsh tech panel that, really cracks down on under rotations or edges or like flat edges and really identifies those issues, it actually is feedback for a skater. And if you're consistently called on your edge, for example, that's automatic incentive to fix it. So I don't necessarily see harsh tech panels as a problem because it means that the skaters has to go and fix those problems.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen with skaters. Yuzuru Hanyu had a terrible triple flip, and he kept getting called on it, and he fixed it. And these days, people aren't getting called as consistently on their edges, so they end up not paying as much time to fixing their flip or their let's edge.
The way that I like to think about it is that the tech panel kind of has an obligation to the skaters that they're judging to give accurate, fair, but strict calls. So if you're giving a skater who, say, has a flutz and an obvious flutz or an obvious flat edge, and you don't call them, you're doing a disservice to that skater because these are problems that need to be highlighted, and you're not giving the skater any real incentive in that sense to fix those errors. So that's just personally what I find really annoying when tech panels are not consistently harsh.
Yeah, and I think in some ways we've seen the tech panel this season. There are a few changes that I think I've noticed through the competitions that have happened so far. But the first being that I feel like the tech panel's gotten a lot more harsh on levels this season. So I feel like with step sequences, with spins, people were not always getting level 4 step sequences, but I felt like it seemed relatively rare to get a lot of like step sequence 1s or 2s in competitions. And now we're seeing them, I feel like we're seeing them a little more frequently now. And I think it's also worth noting that the rules for under rotations have also changed, in that in the past an under rotation was defined as something that was more than a quarter turn, like under rotated, but now it's been expanded to include on the quarter. So now if you landed your jump on the quarter, then it is deemed automatically an under rotation, or it should be at the very least.
Honestly, I'm surprised that they're actually implementing that rule pretty effectively, because when I first saw the change in the rulebook, I automatically saw that and I thought, yeah, that's all well and good, but are the tech panel's actually going to use this rule? Are they going to apply it effectively? And then over the last month or two, we've seen skaters who have hit the quarter mark or have been pretty close to it, and they've been consistently getting under rotation calls. Well, reasonably consistently getting under rotation calls. So props to most of the tech panels for actually doing that. It's good to see that rules are actually being implemented.
Yes, the rules being implemented is all well and good, but the meat of this entire issue lies in the fact that inconsistent tech panel calls are the problem. So it's not a case of if a tech panel is harsh across the entire field, across all the skaters in the competition, that's fine for the reasons that we just said, but it's when a tech panel will call some skaters under rotations and edge issues and not call others. That really is just, it does such a disservice to the judging and to the skaters themselves, because that's where calls of unfairness arise.
Yeah, here the biggest issue was in the ladies event with Stanislava Konstantinova, and in real time, as we watched her skate, I could see potential under rotation calls and edge calls, and she ended up getting a clean go by the tech panel. She didn't get any calls whatsoever, and that helped her win silver here.
She beat Carrie Sakamoto by 0.15 in the total score, and yeah, it was absolutely, it stood out, I think, because she was one of the few skaters who seemed to get away with under rotations that seemed quite visible in real time watching on a stream. Even Alina Zagitova got called on her Lutz and loop. So it was just like, it stood out because of the lack of calls. And obviously because of that narrow margin, even just one under rotation call would have shifted the outcome. And it was not an insignificant result as well, because Grand Prix final qualifications hung in the line.
Like, obviously she skated really well. Like, apart from the issues that we saw, she landed everything pretty well, and she had really nice spins. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of her skating, but I can see that, like, obviously she has a humongous amount of talent, but yeah, her protocol and her scores really stood out in comparison to everyone else, because the tech panel was really quite harsh on everyone, and to see out of the blue Stanislava getting a higher score than we were expecting, it was certainly a bit of a shock, I think, to a lot of us. So yeah, a lot of questions for the tech panel.
Yeah, I rewatched her program several times just to make sure I could see what I thought I saw in the under rotations and the edge calls. So there were two under rotations that were on the brink for me, but she definitely was not on an inside edge for her flip. She was borderline outside, and her final triple Lutz was clearly under rotated. I think it was landed like over the quarter mark from what I can see, from what I saw. And it blows my mind that neither of those were called, whereas everybody else was getting edge calls and everybody else was getting those under rotation calls.
Yeah, and it's a case of like, if the tech panel is obligated to take the skater's side if there is uncertainty in the calls. But in this case, I felt like there was a mismatch in the close calls and who seemed to get the benefit of the doubt. So you can see this really clearly, I think, in Yuna Shiraiwa's free skate. So, she had a clean skate. And so at the end of her skate, her TES was around in the 70s, and then it sunk like a stone basically. And so I went back to rewatch it, and honestly, like, her triple Lutz, triple toe, that toe was called under, but I felt like even pausing the frame on the broadcast at the very least, it felt like it was just on the quarter, maybe even slightly below. So it seemed fair to me that like the tech panel were quite, they were quite strict with her. Again, on the under rotation call on her double loop, I felt like, again, this is an issue with the camera angles and with the quality of the footage, because on the footage, when I was slowing things down frame by frame on YouTube, there was not a lot of height on her jumps. And so when you see some frames, you can't really tell if she's actually touched the ice with her toe pick or if, she's just above touching the ice. But even then, the frame where it looked as though she was under was also basically on the quarter. So again, it was very borderline.
For the double loop under rotation, it could be that even if she was very borderline with the 1/4, because it's a loop combo off the back of another jump, it could be that the tech panel was just being harsh on the pre-rotation.
It could, yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like, yes, I get where they would have been harsh there, and it was like, but it seems like there were some calls and some jumps that seemed comparable to sort of what Stanislava had landed. And so it was an issue of like, well, if they were lenient or if they were harsh on one skater, like what was preventing them, I suppose, from extending that courtesy. And, you know, maybe like in the tech panel's defense, maybe she happened to land her jump in a more visible place from where they were. But, you know, from a broadcast perspective, from what we were seeing on YouTube at the end of the day, it didn't seem like they were that different in terms of the nature of the landing.
So we also saw this happening, not to as great of a degree in my opinion, but still we saw this happening in the men's. In the free skate, Yuzuru Hanyu's quad loop and quad toe looked like they were slightly under the quarter rotation mark to be called under rotated, but they were both called. But none of Alexei Krasnozhov's jumps had any under rotation calls. And he also, in real time, you could see the under rotations for some of his jumps. And once again, this is one of those places where I'm just like, why are you being so inconsistent? Alexei needs to know that his jump technique currently isn't very good before he starts like pulling back in his quads. He's coming off of an injury, and I personally, for me, I don't want him to get injured again because he thinks his technique is good enough currently to now try for harder jumps and then risk further injury.
So moving on, we'll talk a bit more in depth about the ladies' programs. So first, the medalists. In gold was Elena Zagitova of Russia. In silver, like we said, Stanislava Konstantinova of Russia. And in bronze, Carrie Sakamoto of Japan. So starting with Elena, you know, I think it was a bit of a shock for everyone when we were watching her short program to see her pop her opening combo. You know, she went for the triple Lutz, triple loop, and she had a little bit of a shaky landing on the Lutz and just couldn't get it up for the triple loop, and unfortunately singled it out. So a minimum of a double is required in the combo for the short program. So unfortunately, the single loop was invalidated. But she still came first in the short program overall.
I really wish she dropped the triple Lutz, triple loop.
Yeah, same. It seems, especially with the growth spurt that she's gone through over the off season, I'm concerned that it's going to become more of a problem for her, especially since we saw it all through the off season during ice shows when she was landing it quite inconsistently, and then obviously at the Russian test skates, which was a little bit shaky all over. So I think it would probably be safer for her to go for an easier combination, just go for a triple Lutz, triple toe, because, you know, it's better to get good GOE on an easier combo than it is to get bad GOE on a triple Lutz, triple loop.
I will say that, I guess, in the free program, my one issue, I suppose, was with this Alina's skating skills score. I felt like, you know, in her performance, I felt like in some ways, at the beginning, I thought maybe it was something about the way she was performing, but actually looking at her step sequence in particular, the way it's choreographed means that she's really kind of using her entire body to create momentum to go. And I felt like she was noticeably quite slow in some of the turns. And it was partly because she kept alternating between swinging like her leg fully extended out in one direction, and then she would change direction and then have to swing the other leg like in the direction she was turning. And obviously like that was, you know, that's very difficult to do. So like huge props that she can manage it. But it creates this impression that she's really muscling through the movements. And, you know, in the way it's choreographed as well, her arms also being sort of flung out in multiple directions, and it disperses the flow and energy of the step sequence as a whole. And because I guess you would call it multi-directional skating, but in some ways it's kind of like, you know, you get to a point where then you're sacrificing speed to keep changing directions, and then so it starts to look, at least in my opinion, it starts to look very scattered, and it looks quite labored for her. So I definitely was kind of questioning that gap in like skating skills, PCS, between her and someone like Kaori or Yuna Shiraiwa, who were a lot more fluid and flowing in the way that they were moving around in the rink. And I think her ice coverage also didn't look particularly expansive, but obviously, again, that could be camera angles on broadcast. compressing the space.
I definitely think that part of the issue here is just they try to pack so many transitions into her programs to try and hide that her skating skills aren't as strong as some of the other ladies, and to the judges it hides it pretty well, but we can see it as she skates that she moves in a very labored manner, and I honestly really wish she could just decompose this program a little and let things move and flow.
Yeah, she has amazing like skating skills when the programs are simpler. You know, she's got all the goods there. It's just that it's so complicated right now that it sort of brings out the weaknesses more than it's highlighting her strengths.
And it's not just that, like, her programs are packed with transitions and all of these intricate movements, but also so much of it has been specifically constructed to the music. And if she doesn't hit those musical accents, we talked about this before a couple times, if she doesn't hit those musical accents, some of the program's like charm kind of diminishes. I found that like especially with the placement of the jumps, if she is off by like a fraction of a second and she misses the musical accent, it kind of doesn't really like show off the program's composition as well. And I think that's the whole point of like her programs last season did the same thing with the composition of the jumps, like with her Don Quixote program, you know, every jump was placed to a specific, you know, accent in the music, and it worked when she was clean, but it's very obvious to the viewer when you're watching her skate it when she's not hitting those accents. So yeah, like you guys both said, I would have much preferred her to deconstruct the program, you know, simplify it a little bit, focus on the basics, but I don't think that's realistically going to happen, but you know, it's nice to dream.
Moving on, let's talk about our bronze medalist, Carrie Sakamoto of Japan, who had a distressing short program. I think I cried as I watched her cry, and I was just really sad. She fell on her opening triple flip, triple toe combo, and didn't get into combo, so she attempted to combo her triple loop and then fell again. And
yeah, it was absolutely awful to watch. It's those kind of performances are the most like emotionally distressing things to watch, and just especially since we heard like the day before in practice that she hit her head and everyone was worried that she might have hurt herself badly, and then seeing this program, it just it was so emotional. It was just the worst.
She said in an interview post-competition that after she fell on her triple flip, she had a throwback to Lombardia and how she fell apart, which is why she rushed into her triple loop, triple toe combo and then fell again. And I just read that and I was like so sad. Carrie Sakamoto is a ray of sunshine, and anytime anybody does anything to make her sad, I'm just... no. But the program itself definitely felt and looked rushed, especially after she fell on that opening on the triple flip. She definitely was nervous and worried, and you could see it in her performance. She really did not keep it together after that, and honestly, I'm just so sad, guys.
Yeah, well, you know, to her absolute credit, she did come back in the free skate with an absolutely gorgeously, cleanly skated free program. There was an edge call on her triple lutz, but honestly, for me, it was the best that I've ever seen her perform this program. Even when I was sort of seeing it for the first time, I felt like I could see the potential in the build of that music and how it would really create a sort of moment. And she definitely got a moment in her free skate at Helsinki. So it was really, really like gratifying and delightful to see her, you know, pull herself together.
What does she have to do to get like better GOE on her elements? Because I really would like to know why her double axel does not get perfect GOE, because it hits every bullet point. It's a back counter double axel with like amazing height, amazing flow. When she lands it, it's so soft, it's gorgeous, it deserves max GOE, and I will die on this hill.
Like, I was so annoyed after seeing her score. Like, her PCS, I think, should have been at least 5 points higher than it was. At least! It was a disgrace to see that after she skated so well. I mean, obviously, she was skating in the first group, which was going to hamper down her PCS a bit, but Kaori deserved more.
Honestly, yeah.
Kaori deserved to win the free skate, and she didn't, and I will also stand by this.
Oh, no, I stand by that 100%.
Yeah, I honestly expected her to get a season's best with this program. I honestly enjoyed it, thought it was way better performed than her version at Scam, which is what currently has her season's best. And I just don't understand the judging at this competition. I really don't.
Yeah, it's very confusing. But, with a silver at Skate America and now a bronze here, she's going to have to rely on the other ladies' results in the second half of the series as to if she'll qualify for the final, which is kind of sad because I really want her to get in. She really deserves it. She's an amazingly talented skater, and I really hope that we'll get to see her in Vancouver. But also at the same time, there's a million other people I would like to see at the final, and it's going to be, especially with NHK coming up next week, it's going to be hell for the ladies. It's going to be extremely packed. It's going to be a lot. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see.
I'm just so mad, guys.
Well, something to make you less mad is, I would say, just a shout out to Yuna Shiraiwa of Japan. She was second after her short program, which I found absolutely adorable. She did struggle a bit with her levels, especially her spin levels. So there were a few issues there. But I just wanted to also point out her free program, which I find as a really, really great example of like a beautifully, subtly and sophisticatedly constructed program. It's like choreographed by Tom Dixon, who does a lot of choreography for Hamada, her like Yuna's coach, and also who coaches Satoko Miyahara and Rika Kihira. And so I really encourage people listening to this podcast to just go and watch Yuna's program again, because I feel like Tom Dixon's really a master at using choreography to emphasize like musical phrasing. There's a lot of variety in the way she moves. There are little staccato movements to emphasize the staccato like beats in the music, and then there's like long held spirals and other choreographic elements that really brings out the music. As a new skating fan or someone who might be wanting to know more about different types of choreography styles, I'd really encourage people to kind of watch that.
So let's move on now to the pairs event. It was a little bit dry at this event. I think since, obviously halfway through the off season, we had the announcements that Wen Jingsui and Songhan were going to withdraw from both of their Grand Prix assignments, and Helsinki was one of them. So the field was kind of barren of anyone super exciting.
Oof, hush.
Well, no, you know what I mean. When Sui and Han withdraw, everything kind of else goes downhill, at least in my opinion.
Yes. Well, it definitely, it was still a valiant effort on everyone else's part. But, I think, Evie, you had some strong opinions about...
Yes, well, let's go through the medalists first. So in first place, we have Natalia Zabiako and Alexander Embert of Russia. In silver, we have Nicole Della Monica and Matteo Gorise of Italy. And in third place, we have Daria Pavlyuchenko and Denis Kodakin of Russia. So when I went into this, we're seeing that Zabiako and Embert were the leading pair, one of the leading pairs. I was a little bit hesitant because I personally wasn't a huge fan of their programs last season. I felt that they were quite conceptual, and not in a good kind of conceptual, like conceptual to the point where I don't understand what is you're actually trying to present on the ice. It was very abstract and it didn't really communicate with me. Like, I remember during the Olympics when they were performing their free skate and Belinda Noonan, the commentator, was trying to walk through their free skate, and I was like, I am not getting anything of what you're describing. It was just kind of confusing and not my favorite. But I will say that I really like their packaging so far this season, even if their short program is a little bit campy with the night theme that they've got going on, those costumes. It's definitely a look. But I think that the stronger theming kind of works better for them in this case. So, I like it so far. And Natalia's new haircut, it outsells. So good on whoever decided that the short hair was a good idea for her, because, just props to you, because it really suits her.
Short hair for pairs ladies. That's like...
it's how you become a good pairs lady.
Yeah. Someone said that she kind of looked like Ksenia Stolbova a little bit, and I'm like, oh, I see it a little bit. It might just be the dark short hair, but the resemblance is strong. So moving on to ice dance, the medalists here were Alexandra Stepanova and Ivan Bukin of Russia. In silver, we have Charlene Guinard and Marco Fabbri of Italy. And then in bronze, we have Lorraine McNamara and Quinn Carpenter of the US. So first, Stepanova and Bukin. I think that they have probably, out of the entire ice dance field, the best programs, both the rhythm dance and the free dance. I'm absolutely in love with both of their programs.
Oh, they're so good.
They are so good. And they highlight their strengths so well. Like I ranted about them a lot in the Finlandia episode, but, seeing their rhythm dance in full here without the stopping halfway through because of the confetti on the ice situation that we had in Finlandia, seeing the whole program in its entirety, it's fantastic. Their movements are so sharp and excellent, and they have such a good chemistry with each other. It's just awesome. And, I keep ranting about their amazing sit twizzles that they do in the first set in the rhythm dance. They only got +1 grade of execution on the section, on the whole thing for the twizzles, which is an improvement because at Finlandia they did get level 1s, and that was a crime. But they only got +1 GOE, which I understand because they obviously can't get close together when they've in the sit position with both their legs, spinning, because obviously
She also has really long legs.
and she has really long legs. So, you don't want to start sword fighting. Actually, thinking about that, I would like that. +5 GOE for sword fight blade choreography. I would like that. Come on, guys.
That sounds
step
like
it up.
straight out of Blaze of Glory.
Oh my god. I think it would work, okay? It's the drama we need in Tango Romantica this season. But anyway, I think the rhythm dance was really good, overall in the RD. At this event, the tech panel again were quite harsh on calling levels, and I don't think anyone, I think one team got a level 4 on the pattern, and that was it, and it was only for one section. So it was a bit messy, but that's all right because they did really well. Their free dance, they scored another 120, which they definitely deserve. They did change their music cut for the free dance slightly, and I know this because I've watched their free dance from Finlandia too many times to count. But during the choreographed character step sequence, there's like some really intense drums that weren't there before, and that's probably there to fix the issue that they had. They almost got a music violation at Finlandia. I think 3 out of 9 judges voted for it, and because there is the requirement in the free dance where you have to have a change in tempo, and they were definitely towing the line with their old music cut. But at the moment, I think that it's quite jarring at the moment, especially as someone who's seen it a lot. It's quite jarring. So, hopefully I hope they soften that a little bit. But apart from that, the program is fantastic. They are fantastic skaters. Everyone go watch their programs, please.
I watched them once and I'm like, I'm a fan now.
Yeah, their programs this season are so great. I will say that as a ships fan, I find their free dance a little too much, but it's great.
I love their rotational lift in the free dance.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
So good. You don't see that many teams try and get that bullet point where the man has to be on one leg for some of the rotations for the levels. But, you see Ivan in the last couple of rotations and they're spinning so fast and then he just sticks his leg up and it looks at the judges and it's just like, yeah, look at me. I've got my leg up. It's just, oh my god. It's
Witness the leg.
Witness the leg. There's your episode title. It's just, yeah, I can't emphasize enough how great Stepanova and Bukin are. Their next assignment is Cup of Russia, and, hopefully they will get to the Grand Prix final. I'm not going to say anything. I just said something, but, I don't want to jinx them, but I need them to make the Grand Prix final because they're so good, and they just, I just need to stop ranting about them.
Yeah, I think she rants about them more than Wang Lu at this point.
Oh my god, don't tell anyone. Okay, moving on. We've got the silver medalists, Charlene Guinard and Marco Fabbri of Italy. Obviously in their rhythm dance, they had a little bit of an issue at the start of it where the music...
it's like a 2-minute issue.
A 2-minute issue where, for some reason, the music got mixed up and they started playing Claire de Lune.
I would love to see a tango to Claire de Lune. Evie, I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't give Papadakis and Cicerone ideas, Yogs. Do not give them ideas. They will do that. No, I'm pretty sure what happened was that I think Christina Carreira and Anthony Ponomarenko, they skate to Bloodstream by Tokyo Myers in their free dance. And for some reason, that starts with the Claire de Lune music, that piece. So I think that for some reason, the music operator got mixed up or something happened with the computer system and it just started playing. And so obviously Charlene and Mako got a little bit thrown out of their whole, sensual tango mood kind of thing to Claire de Lune. So they had to obviously skate around for a little bit, keep warm while they waited for their music to come up. Unfortunately, in the program itself, they did have a time violation with the ending, but they were the only team that got a level 4 on one section of the pattern that particular night. So that was good to see. I think I think personally, especially coming out of what I've seen of them before from the last couple seasons, I'm very surprised how far they've gone up in terms of just scores in general and how the panels seem to be rewarding them. Because if you were to tell me at the start of the season that they were, going to get 2 silvers on the Grand Prix and be shoo-ins for the Grand Prix final, I would have looked at you and gone, okay, I mean, you do you, but it's certainly not exactly strange because they're both very good skaters. I think that especially after Cappellini and Lenotti retired after last season, they're looking to be the next top Italian dance team. And it seems like the judges certainly agree with that.
I was quite confused with scoring in their free dance.
Yeah, it was...
They had a fall.
Yeah.
They had a fall in their free dance. It wasn't on an element, so they didn't lose in tech scores, but we shouldn't have seen 9s in PCS, according to the new PCS guidelines, which clearly states that a fall in a free dance would mean that all of the PCS scores could not be higher than 9.
And not just that, you routinely see dance couples that have falls in their programs, whether they're on the element or not, you routinely see them get hammered in PCS. So it's very confusing to see that the judges gave them such a high score. They got 118, which even considering the changes in the scale of values and the differences in the free dance in terms of elements, we've seen a 5 to 5-ish point increase overall. That's still, in my opinion, a bit too high for a free dance with a serious error in it. Even if they did the rest of their elements really well, what we've seen historically, it just doesn't line up with what you see on the ice.
I'm also really confused because they scored higher in this free dance than they did at Skate America.
Yeah, they did. And their PCS was 3 points. There was a couple points higher here than at Skate America too, which is just... Oh man, I have so many questions for all of these tech panels in general at this event. What are they doing? Okay, let's move on to talking about the men at Helsinki.
So another core topic that we'd like to hit at is that GOE range has been pretty crazy this season. As we all know, the ISU has changed from the plus or minus 3 system to the plus or minus 5 system for GOEs, and GOEs do leave quite a bit of room for interpretation. For example, what is a good takeoff? It's not clearly defined, so skaters can do what they think is a good takeoff and hope that the judges agree with them. So positive GOEs for jumps have to hit certain bullet criteria that's currently set out in the ISU rulebook, like very good height and distance, good takeoff and landing, and effortless throughout, whatever that actually means.
Yeah, and those are 3 bullet points that must be hit for a jump to be able to hit the +4, +5s of the new GOE range. And so obviously this is an issue with a lot of teething issues at the moment. It's the first season of the judges applying the new rules, so it's natural to expect there to be a bit of fluctuation. Reading kind of a post on Twitter by Joseph Inman, who apparently is a former judge at world or Olympic level, he basically was talking about, he was commenting on a clip of Yuzuru Hanyu's triple axel twizzle in practice at GP Helsinki. And so he was saying that, he would give it a +4 because for him, he would want more clarity and defined arm carriage, and the landing free leg could have a better line. And so it's these justifications that I found really interesting, because I assume that all falls under bullet 5, which is about very good body position from takeoff to landing. But when you actually look at the way that the GOEs are supposedly rewarded, if you hit 5 of those GOE bullets out of 6, you're technically meant to get a +5. So to be honest, it strikes me as just a reflection of the fact that GOEs are very subjective in the minds of judges, and that, one judge that might really value and be really nitpicky about body lines, for example, might give a completely different GOE range to another judge who may not look so closely or carefully at this one particular quality. And so the lack of, specificity in how these terms are defined in the rulebook strikes me as a bit of a problem, and probably an explanation for why we're seeing such a huge range of GOEs being awarded for the same element. Because sometimes I'm looking at them, there's been a couple of instances where the difference between the lowest GOE awarded on the same element and the highest has been like 8. And I'm like, did the judges watch the same program? Like, do they have the same eyes? Like, what did they see?
Like, you look at Elizaveta Tuktamishkova at Skate Canada last week, her triple axel went from like +4 to -1. Like, are they watching the same element? I'm so confused. It makes no sense to have that much variation in the markings.
Yeah, this happened here at Helsinki, where the Finnish judge gave Yuzuru's quad toe, triple toe combination in the short a +4 GOE, despite the fact he turned out on the landing. And honestly, it shouldn't have gotten more than like +2 if you just look at like the other bullet points that he hit. He made a major error in the landing, so he shouldn't have gotten anywhere close to +4.
Yeah, but then you consider that one judge gave his back counter triple axel Euler triple salchow in the free skate a +1, and you're just kind of like, what did he not hit? In like that's a +1 in the company of most of the other marks that were at least like +3, 4s. I think there was a 2 maybe in there as well. But it's just like that range to me strikes me as completely absurd, because clearly something's wrong with the way that either your rulebook is phrased or the way you're training your judges for there to be such a huge range in the same element that they're all watching at the same time. And another thing that I find a bit concerning, I suppose, is that there's no mention of like appealing any of the marks being given by judges in the ISU technical handbook and in their kind of official processes. Apart from being able to appeal the nomination of a judge to a competition, so at the start of the competition, you can say, okay, I don't want this judge here for these following reasons. But there have been instances, for example, in the Ondrej Nepola trophy, where Mikhail Kolyada had like one judge gave him 0.50 for interpretation. And that's like, it's an obvious mistake. They probably just entered the wrong value in the computer system. But it's like, so is it just going to hang out there? Like, why aren't there mechanisms for this to be corrected either before they submit it or like, upon submission?
Tech panels and the judges, they have meetings after the competition is over to discuss the scores overall. Like they discuss the competition, they have roundtable meetings, and like it's confusing that not only that, these errors happen, but no correction is given as to it, because obviously Mikhail's PCS, his interpretation score, was a mistake, yet there wasn't a revision given. And I know that, Ondrej Nepola is a smaller competition, but, you'd hope that at bigger ones, an error like this would be revised, because it could, imagine if this happened at a Grand Prix event or at Worlds or like at a championship event, people would be much more, focused in on it. But I think it kind of, slipped under the radar a little bit.
So let's move on to the medalists of the men's event. In first place, winning the gold, is Yuzuru Hanyu of Japan. In second, winning silver, is Mikhail Brezina from Czech Republic. And in bronze, we have Jun-Hwan Cha of Korea. So, Yuzuru Hanyu, his Grand Prix debut.
He finally broke the curse of his first Grand Prix. It's his first Grand Prix gold for his first assignment in something like 9 years. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's got 9 seasons, and this is the first time he's won his first Grand Prix assignment.
And he did it in style.
But he also set 3 world records here.
Woo!
But, oh god, some of these elements, I have concerns. Like, in his short program, I was honestly concerned that he was not going to land his triple axel.
Oh my god, what even is an axis anyway? It was so tilted, I was positive that he was going to either stumble or fall, and he carried it off in style, and I was just like, damn, what the hell's going on here?
It's very, very rare to see Yuzu struggle with a triple axel. Personally, I think it's because he's not used to the really, really difficult twizzle entry into the axel. I think, that I can't emphasize enough how difficult that is. And he not only twizzles in and does the axle, he twizzles out of the axle as well. So I felt like, honestly, that was probably what threw him a little bit there. Alas, he also suffered from level curses and got his very cursed step sequence 3, which he tends to get sometimes.
At least his spins were there this weekend.
Yeah, he got his spin levels after...
We can be grateful for that.
After the invalidated spin hell of Classic.
Yep. Well, he always improves between his assignments, and that's great. I saw some people kind of wondering, like, why step sequence 3, and it's not that his step sequence itself was constructed to not fulfill the requirements of step sequence 4 levels. It was that he made a mistake in that he jumped a step in one of his turns. And so basically when you make a mistake like that, that brings you down a level. And you you see him sort of do this, I think, largely because he sometimes tends to rush through his steps because he's really fast at them. And so he can kind of be a little bit sloppy there. And that's why sometimes like a couple of small mistakes or one slightly more serious mistake will cause him or cause every skater to drop levels.
This definitely isn't a new issue. He's been doing it for quite a while
now.
Yeah,
Yuzuru tends to miss that one level, that one step. It's always the same step too. It's a hop that he doesn't do it correctly, and it just step sequence 3.
Yeah.
He had a gorgeous quad sal in his short program, and just what does he need to do to get +5 GOE? Someone explain to me what else he can do, because his quad sal is perfection.
Something I do really want to recommend is to search up slow motion camera of Yuzuru's Otonal, and I assume they'll probably upload Origin as well. There's a fan with a high-speed camera at Helsinki, and they basically have a slow motion version of Yuzu's entire program. And so for new figure skating fans or just anyone who appreciates good steps, like really it just highlights how difficult and how many things he's doing with his feet the entire program through. You can really kind of see the way that he moves, the multi-directional skating, the complexity and difficulty of his jump entries. And, he's really fast usually in real time, but the slow motion camera really just slows it down and makes you realize just how much he kind of crams in to his steps and into his programs.
It blows my mind that his transition score is always his lowest program component score, when his programs are packed full of transitions.
I mean, transitions are always the lowest score out of everyone's.
Yeah, it's like the ugly stepchild of the PC's family. Why? I really don't understand, honestly. I've never seen anyone with a higher transition score, where the transition score is higher than their other components.
One thing I would like to say about the short program is he did change the music slightly, and the cut at the end, right before his final spin, was very jarring to me.
Yeah, it really threw me out of it when I first heard it, especially, since we were so used to the original cut of it, hearing that change and quite a harsh change in the music, really, I wouldn't be surprised if Yuzu ended up changing it before his next assignment, Rostelecom. because he can be quite picky with his music for his programs. But yeah, right now, I think it kind of, I'm not saying that it absolutely needs to be fixed, but it's just something that a lot of people noticed while watching his program.
And just moving on to his free skate, it was not completely clean. He did struggle quite a bit with his jumps, and that was something he acknowledged. But he was, the first ever to attempt a quad toe triple axel combination, or sequence rather. It wasn't ratified because it was a minus GOE. He struggled with landing the triple axel, but as is Yuzu's way, that's probably going to just make him more pissed off and determined to come back with a vengeance in Russia in 2 weeks.
He explained at the press conference that the reason why he's attempting this combination is because he doesn't want any doubles in his free skate.
He really hates the number 2. So yeah, as a program as a whole, I think it was really obvious that at the start he was kind of trying to conserve energy for that quad toe triple axel, because I did find that his movements weren't as sharp, and it lacked that kind of fire and snap that really would make Origin as a program sizzle.
Yeah, I think that there's that one part right in between the step sequence and the triple loop, halfway through the program, where, he stops after the step sequence when the music kind of slows down. And I think when we saw it in the program in practice and media day, that whole section looked very fluid, yet it still had some of the sharpness that the step sequence before it had. But when we saw it here and when we saw it at Autumn Classic, it didn't really retain that. To me, it looked quite noticeably slower and sort of imprecise in its movements, kind of like he was just trying to get from that bit to the triple loop entrance, which is, for the fact that we're only at his first Grand Prix now, obviously the program is still going to develop, and what we've seen in practice, highlights that bit is supposed to be faster and a bit smoother. So I hope that I'm not going to say by Ross Telecom because that's only 2 weeks away, but Grand Prix final, hopefully, Japanese nationals, all that stuff, again, Japanese nationals, hopefully. All those things.
Never try to predict the men's figure skating season.
I know, figure skating.
I know!
Evie, you're...
Give me a break, it's 3:30 in the morning.
Moving on to the silver medalist, Mikhail Brezina. I really liked both his short program and his free skate. It was the comeback of the uncle season this season. But yeah, no, I found that I saw him for the first time at Worlds in Milan this year, and he really brought the house down with his energy. It was just so palpable, and when you're in a huge arena, when someone comes out with that kind of energy and gets the crowd going, it is so powerful as a presence. And so I really I love the energy he exudes on the ice. I think he really takes ownership, especially of the rock in his free skate. You really buy into the fact this is organic, this is part of him, this is what he loves, and he sells it so well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really like both of his programs this season. I will say though, I wish he would get an actual costume for the short program because the t-shirt, pants and belt really isn't doing it for me. And also his free skate. His free skate is literally a repeat of his costume from last season. It's the same one. So,
Well, he's clearly putting more energy into actually landing his quads, so I'll accept the costumes if we can keep getting those gorgeous quads from him. This was his best short program of his career, I believe.
Yeah,
this was
93.
the first time he went over 90 in the short.
That's just awesome. And considering he's got 2 silver medals from 2 Grand Prix, who would have predicted this going in, that he was going to do so well in his 2 assignments, and now he's pretty, he's in a really good place to qualify for the final. We got to have that uncle in the final.
Yeah, exactly. We want some uncle representation.
So next we have Jun-Hwan Cha, our bronze medalist. He had back-to-back Grand Prix assignments, and he delivered.
Back-to-back assignments, back-to-back bronze medals.
I came into this just being really worried about him having to do back-to-back assignments, but...
On different continents as well.
Yeah, on different continents, and even though, I think he did much better at Skate Canada than he did here at Helsinki, he still did very well, and he's going home with a second bronze medal, and it's amazing. And he's the first Korean man to win a Grand Prix medal, let alone 2. So
props to Jun-Hwan for being such a pioneer as well in, small Fed Nation represent. I love this podium for that particularly.
It was a great podium, but I think we also have to talk about the sort of disappointments in the men's event.
Do we have to?
Well, it hurts me, Evie.
I know it hurts, but we have to kind of talk about Boyang Jin of China, who unfortunately gave us some Worlds 2018 flashbacks in the free skate after he was third in the short program.
Worlds 2018, Evie.
Sorry.
Let's talk about his short program.
Yeah, he was third in the short, and apart from the fall on the combo, he did really, really well. I love this program for him. I think While My Guitar Gently Weeps is a perfect choice for him music-wise. It shows off so much of his natural charm.
I really love Boyang. I think this is, for some reason, I've always enjoyed his short programs more than his free skates over the past few seasons, and I think it's true again this season. Like, this short program is just amazing for him. His step sequence is so great, and it also helps shows off his improvements in his skating skills. If you compare Boyang now to the Boyang from 3 seasons ago, there is like a visible improvement you can see to the naked eye in his skating skills and the amount of like transitions and choreo that's going into his program right now compared to back then.
Well, that being said, I would like it if his choreographers gave him more transitions into some of his jumps, especially like obviously you need quite a bit of setup for a quad lutz, but at the same time, like, we've seen the same sort of setup where he's just gliding across the entire rink and to get it, and then almost crashing into the boards nearly every time we've seen him in competition this weekend. It's just, oh my god. He got, especially, not like, he got close here, but he also got so close a couple times in the free skate to the point where his leg, like, his free leg didn't have anywhere to go once he landed. Oh my god, it's this, just figure skating in general is not good for my blood pressure.
Boyang's jumps are so huge. Like, I don't know how he does it. I think he has some of the biggest jumps in figure skating, but he doesn't have the control to land them, and I want him to get control of his jumps, and when he does that, he will do amazing. But right now, he just keep getting bigger and bigger every season. I don't understand how this is happening.
But no, I really loved the way that his projection and expression just really shines, especially in his short program step sequence. Like, it's like a light turns on, and then he's really just letting his personality shine, and I love that because he has such like a quirky and hilarious like personality that doesn't always come through, I think, in press conferences and everything. But if you go on his social media, like, he is the craziest, like, most memeable like dude, and he's just so funny and everything. So I really love that the short program gives him a vehicle to kind of, play around with that, like, almost, be a bit cool, be a bit edgy, but also like goofy and like energetic at the same time.
I really hope he, like, reevaluates what happened in these programs and, trains well in the next couple of weeks, because remember, his second assignment is France, and the men's field there is really packed.
Yeah, but unfortunately he placed 5th here, which means his likelihood, even if he wins France, of going to the Grand Prix final is so low, and I'm so sad.
Yeah, I really did appreciate, though, in his free skate at how, like, you could see him visibly gathering all his energy to kind of throw into that final choreographic sequence. And, I think that was where I really saw the maturity that I think he's developed over the off season shine through, because it's like, oh, like, even though honestly, like, the jumps were a bit of a disaster, like, he still could pull himself together and like finish strongly. But as someone who watched him live at Worlds, I'm like, I did not want this for him. This really wasn't the way I wanted him to start his Grand Prix season. And it is hard to kind of say much about the program given, like, all the problems with it. I think it's not the sort of music I think automatically comes alive with his style, but we'll have to see how it goes in France, and hopefully better. I'm just so sad.
Aren't we all really, really sad? We didn't really get to see much of this program because we were all dying from him falling, but I think it's a good program, and I think if he can land his jumps in the future, it'll be a really great vehicle for him to like show the maturity and growth that he's had the past few seasons. I don't think his past few free skates really did that for him, so I think this is a great opportunity for him if he can land his jumps.
Please, Boyan. For my heart, do it, please.
Skating gods, please do this one thing for me. Is let Boyan be happy and land his jumps.
Speaking of making someone happy, also please kindly extend that favor to Mikhail Kolyada.
Oh god, it was so disappointing to see how he performed here.
He was having very good practices too, which is like just doubly as unfortunate.
And we saw him have good outings at like the Russian test skates and then at Andrei Nepola Trophy in Finlandia. You know, to see him both programs here kind of fall short of all that, it really isn't great. But like, I really love both of his programs, even if he didn't perform to the best of his abilities here. You know, I think the short program works really well for his style, and the free program is one of the best Carmens I've ever seen, or at least one of the best Carmens of the season, because there are quite a lot of them.
I love his program. I think it's the perfect, like he has the carriage and the intensity to really like pull it off, and he has that kind of sly, coy like playfulness that really like just channels the program for me.
It works so well. It sucks that Mikhail has two really difficult assignments in terms of field, like here, and then you've got Rostelecom in a few weeks, and it seems like the Russian Fed really doesn't want Mikhail to make Grand Prix final by the way that they put him in these assignments, but just I hope he can. I really do hope he can bounce back and do well and make the podium at Rostelecom in a few weeks.
Yeah, same. To me, Mikhail is the second best all-around skater after Yuzuru, and so watching him, like, he would be so great if his nerves, I fully believe at this point it's really just his nerves. After he makes one mistake, he just keeps making them, and he's like such a great performer. He has great skating skills. He really is putting all of his energy into these programs. And
he has all the raw material.
Yeah.
But, like, even when he falls, like, I just really admire the way he can he falls, he gets up, and then there's like no change whatsoever to his expression, and he just kind of soldiers on.
He has such great mentality. I just really don't know what's going on with him and his jumps, and I feel like this happens to him a lot at all the major competitions. Like, he does great at smaller competitions, and then when he goes to like major competitions, we've seen this historically, he does tend to like something happens midway through a jump, and he has excellent jumps. His height, his entries, it's just landing them that's the issue.
I think personally it's to do with his axis. His axis he starts off well and then it kind of tilts. So even the jumps he does land, it's always kind of like your heart's in your throat, you know, like it's kind of, will he land it, will he not? Sometimes his triple axel, I'm like, how did you get that? Like, how?
His triple axel is fantastic, though. The height and distance he gets on it is just breathtaking.
It is.
It's great. It might help if he went to take some lessons at the TCC School of Saves.
Do an open class for TCC Saves.
How are they going to clear up the ice? They've got a dozen girls to do it.
So shout out of the week goes to the Marigold Ice Unity synchronized skating team for their Transformers free skate during the opening ceremony of Grand Prix Helsinki. We actually have a fan cam of that entire performance on the In the Loop Twitter page. So that is In the Low podcast at Twitter. So if you scroll down a little bit, we'll have a moments page where you can see all of our media from Grand Prix Helsinki, including that performance, because it was amazing.
Yeah, we have to give a big shout out to all of our team members that were at Helsinki this weekend. So they shared a lot of content on Twitter. It's good to see them all having a really great time there, especially since, you know, the event was lining up to look so good and they all were having a blast, especially Tilda, who was official press at the event. She got some really lovely photos at like the press conferences and some videos of the draws. So, you know, big shout out to them for doing so much work on a weekend that was truly jam-packed with things to do. They really pulled through, and, you know, We all need to send them money so they can all get a drink together. They deserve.
Also, shout out to Kat and Gabbs as well for helping with the photo editing on the ground level.
And you, Lay, you did a lot.
Yes,
And you.
We were sort of tag teaming the whole thing, but it's all out of the love of bringing the amazing photos that everyone took at the venue to everyone on Twitter. It's by fans for fans, and that's kind of what drives us as well.
So thank you again for listening, and we hope to see you on our next episode, which will be about NHK Trophy.
If you want to get in touch with us, then please feel free to contact us via our website, inthelowpodcast.com, or on Twitter, Tumblr, or Facebook. You can find our episodes on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify.
If you enjoy the show and want to help support the team, then please consider making a donation to us on our Ko-fi page. That's Ko-fi. And we'd like to give a huge thank you to all the listeners who have contributed to our team thus far. We truly, truly appreciate every little bit of support that we get.
You can find the links to all of our social media pages and our coffee on the website. If you're listening on iTunes, please consider leaving a rating and a review if you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening. This has been Yogeeta,
Evie,
And Lay. See you soon.
bye!
Bye!